Dark, moody cinematic opening. Fast cuts of complex quantum equations fading into chaotic blurs, contrasted suddenly with a chalkboard glowing under a spotlight. A charcoal sketch of a smiling man appears, surrounded by floating ink drops and glowing formula lines. Sound design brings in a low, pulsing ambient synth, building up into a sharp, striking chord as the voiceover cuts through the silence. What if everything you were taught about how the world works was a quiet, comfortable illusion? You sit in a classroom, you memorize formulas, you pass the test, and you walk away feeling smart. But do you actually understand anything? Or did you just learn how to repeat words you do not feel? Quick smash cuts of students looking bored, textbooks slamming shut, followed by a sudden burst of bright, high-contrast light and a vintage photo of Richard Feynman laughing. Decades ago, one man looked at the towering fortress of academic jargon, institutional status, and gate-kept knowledge, and he laughed. He did not just break the rules of physics, he broke the illusion of how we think. They called him a genius, a rebel, but history remembers him by a title far more powerful, the Great Explainer. The title card slams onto the screen with massive cinematic typography while the sound design hits a deep, resonant bass drop. Transitioning to historical archives, sepia-toned photos of New York, and young Feynman tinkering with radios in his room, the narrative shifts to uncovering who this man truly was. To understand Richard Feynman, you have to throw out everything you know about the stereotypical, stiff, boring scientist in a white lab coat. Feynman was not just a physicist who helped build the atomic bomb, decoded quantum mechanics, and won a Nobel Prize. He was a safecracker, a bongo-playing showman, an artist, and a man who treated the universe not as a textbook full of laws to memorize, but as a giant magical puzzle box waiting to be opened. A split screen shows Feynman solving complex calculus alongside footage of him playing traditional drums in Brazil or sketching portraits. While other physicists lived in ivory towers, terrified of looking foolish, Feynman chased confusion. He believed that if something could not be explained simply, it meant one terrifying thing: you did not actually understand it. And that realization brings us to the core mystery of this story. How did a man who spent his life playing with quantum quirks change the way humanity thinks about learning itself? A cinematic tone shift takes over with moody blues and grays, using visual metaphors of a factory line stamping identical gears to represent traditional education. Let us talk about how you learn science. Rows of desks, a teacher at the chalkboard, memorize the term, pass the exam, forget 90% of it by next month. Feynman noticed this disease early on during a trip to textbook evaluation committees, where he uncovered a terrifying reality. Textbooks were not written to teach children how to think, they were written to sound impressive. A close-up of text glows on screen, highlighting meaningless definitions disguised as deep science. Feynman spotted a physics book describing energy, but it did not tell kids what energy actually does in the real world, how a rolling ball slows down or how heat moves. Instead, it gave abstract, circular definitions that meant absolutely nothing. He realized something profound. Knowing the name of a bird in English, Portuguese, Chinese, and Latin does not mean you know a single damn thing about the bird. You only know what people call it. Rapid montage of historical footage from Feynman's teaching days at Caltech shows students leaning forward, completely captivated. Feynman refused to play that game, stepping into lecture halls without a pedestal, tearing complex math apart, stripping away fancy vocabulary, and asking the most dangerous question a human being can ask: why? Clean, minimalist graphics take over the screen, showcasing a bright whiteboard aesthetic illustrating a four-step framework born from this obsession with pure understanding. This led Feynman to develop a mental framework so powerful it is used today by top CEOs, programmers, and polymaths around the globe, known simply as the Feynman Technique. It consists of 4 brutal, unyielding steps. Choose a concept, teach it to a child without allowing jargon, identify the gaps where you stuttered or hid behind big words, and finally simplify and create analogies. Dynamic animation shows a complex quantum wave function being translated into simple ripples in a pond using everyday objects. Feynman did not look at nature with intimidation. He looked at it like a child taking apart a mechanical toy. If he could not explain quantum electrodynamics, the interaction of light and matter, in a way that made intuitive sense, he considered it a failure of his own mind, not a limitation of the student. He proved that intelligence is not about how many complex terms you can spit out, but that true intelligence is the ultimate act of translation. The tone shifts to high drama with archival news footage of the 1986 Space Shuttle disaster, while the sound design drops into a tense, ticking rhythm. But Feynman was not just a classroom philosopher, and when reality pushed back, his method became a matter of life and death. In 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded just 73 seconds after liftoff, stunning the world, and a massive government commission was formed to find out why. Month after month, high-ranking executives and engineers hid behind corporate speak, defensive slides, and bureaucratic paperwork. A dramatic zoom-in highlights Feynman sitting at the investigation table, holding a simple glass of ice water and a rubber O-ring. While everyone else was panicking over politics, Feynman did what he always did. He went straight to physical reality. During a live, televised national hearing in front of the entire world, Feynman did not give a speech. He took a piece of rubber O-ring, dropped it into a small clamp of ice water for a few seconds, and pressed it. Slow-motion macro shots show the rubber remaining compressed and brittle in the cold water, then snapping back slowly. Without a single complex equation, using a glass of ice water on live television, he exposed the exact engineering failure that caused the tragedy, piercing through layers of corporate lies with pure, undeniable physical truth. That was the power of the great explainer. Reality does not care about your titles or your status. Reality simply is, and Feynman knew how to listen to it. Music swells into an inspiring cinematic crescendo, featuring a montage of modern thinkers, universe shots, and Feynman's iconic smiling portrait. Richard Feynman passed away in 1988, but his ghost haunts every single person who looks at the world and refuses to settle for simple answers, leaving behind a challenge for all of us. Stop pretending you understand things you do not. Tear down the jargon, look past the titles, strip away the noise, find the core truth, and dare to ask why until the illusion shatters. The screen dims down to a crisp, dark background with a single glowing quote. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. Because in a world full of noise, the most dangerous, powerful thing you can be is someone who actually understands how things work. If this journey into the mind of a legend made you look at reality a little differently, hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment with your favorite Feynman quote, and as always, stay curious.